Well, hello and welcome into this edition of the Talk Nats podcast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms. My name is Dan Holney. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Talk Nats. And the best way that you can help grow this show is to subscribe or follow the Talk Nats podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. Give it a 5-star rating. Leave some positive comments. Share this podcast. I sure would appreciate it. So let's dive into it in this edition of the Talk Nats podcast. A big win by your favorite team and mine, the Nationals, over the Dodgers in LA. It's kind of funny that one win can kind of just make you feel that much better about the team, despite the fact that they haven't been playing that well as of late. Big picture. I'll talk about that a bit later. I'll talk about James Wood and CJ Abrams. If we want to talk about bright spots on this team, I don't think you need to look any further than James Wood and CJ Abrams. I'll talk about that. And then just we'll kind of check in with Robert Hassell III and see what he's been up to since his most recent time on the big team of the Nationals. But just let's get into it here. Quite an attendance at the game of 54,000 plus. The biggest crowd in MLB this year, and the Nats thumped the Dodgers 7-3. If you want to talk about moral victories, that was definitely the case. It is, I'm going to go ahead and say the lowly Nationals at this point, near the bottom of the East and taking on the Dodgers, who are on top in the West. So definitely the vibes around this team coming off that win are good. You take a look at Jake Irvin, who pitched 5 1/3, 6 hits, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts. Ferrer came in, no runs, 1 strikeout. Brad Lord, 2 strikeouts, no hits, no runs. And Zach Brixey comes in, 1 hit, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 1 strikeout. So Jake Irvin, pitched well, kind of up and down what we've seen from him this season. But 5 1/3 innings, I guess I would like to see more from him. Kind of a shorter start, if you will, in my estimation. But 7 strikeouts, 2 earned runs, 6 hits, not too bad. But if we want to talk about the offensive firepower and where this is going to get interesting here is Nathaniel Lowe at 5 at-bats, 2 home runs, 2 RBIs, 2 hits, 2 runs. That it's going to be interesting. I think that his value has gone up with his play as of late, more specifically yesterday, and whatever we will see from him today, that he very well could be on the move at the trade deadline. You might be thinking, why? He's one of the big contributors, and I get that, but if you listen to this show on a somewhat regular basis, I spoke about yesterday that the Nationals are still a ways away from being contenders, and it's these moral victories is what I'm going to say. A 7-3 win over the Dodgers. It feels good. It does. And, taking a look at the cumulative games that they've played against them this season, it's something to kind of hang your hat on, that this Nationals team can at times, rise to the challenge. Kind of like the Capitals, they play well up to teams, but sometimes don't play so well down to teams. See Marlins and Rockies, for example. But before I drill down and get more to a granular level, let's talk about the most recent game, which of course was yesterday. Like I said, big turnout, 7-3. That's a big thing. Not a typo. If you didn't watch the game, the Nats outslugged the defending champs, 5 home runs, a strong outing from Jake Irvin, and honestly, some real swagger. Can they vacuum that up? Can they continue to keep moving forward? I think that, oftentimes it's confidence. And I talk about that on all the different sports podcasts that I host. It is confidence. You've seen that on the Nationals. You saw that with the Capitals, with Mantha before, and Ovechkin, that, struggling at points, and all of a sudden they get off the schneid and it just keeps rolling. Can the Nationals vacuum this up, put that wind in their sail, and keep them pushing down the regular season? That's my hope anyway. But, big standout players, and it shouldn't be any real surprise, is James Wood. Just totally clutch. And if you are not drinking the James Wood Kool-Aid at this point, then I don't know what you're waiting for, because he is that future franchise player. Kind of is right now, but I think that, we're starting to see just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to James Wood. And if you didn't see the game, it was a scoreless in the fourth inning, crowd buzzing, Dustin May on the mound, and Wood just launches one 451 feet to deep center. And guess what? That shut up the LA crowd big time. And, you take a look at it. I think that in a lot of ways, this is a good showcase for James Wood on the bigger stage. And, I know that there are Major League Baseball fans that are kind of familiar with the lay of the land of Major League in general. But I think now on these big stages, I'm talking LA, New York, for example, that if you aren't too familiar with James Wood, you better get familiar with him because he is lighting it up. Another trade chip that could be on the move for the Nationals on the trade deadline is Luis García Jr. And what did he do? The next inning after James Wood, he follows suit. Then Nathaniel Lowe joins in the fun, not once, but twice. And one of those, his 100th career home run. So you take a look at it, Luis García Jr., I like him at second base, but if the Nationals can get a good return on him, I'm liking it. And Nathaniel Lowe, I kind of viewed as a piece that they could flip. Say he has a resurgent year. Not that he was bad before, but let me rephrase that. Let me reframe that. If he can continue in the trajectory that he was on, then I think that the Nationals could get a good return. You take a look at it. Sometimes they're hard to handle. You take a look at Candelario and the return that the Nats got on him. I think it was worth it, big picture. But as far as the game last night, you couldn't have written it any better if you tried. The Nats bats, the Nats power showing up. Jake Irvin having another great outing, and CJ Abrams got in on it too. Going yard in the seventh to push the lead back to 3. The offense, the pitching, the defense, it was a complete performance. Something that has somewhat eluded the Nationals thus far this season is a complete game. Oftentimes they'll have, the pitching, but then they don't got the run support, or vice versa, that it's good to see the team coming together and picking up, a nice team win. That Jake Irvin, who sometimes is lights out and sometimes not the best guy in the rotation, pitched a good game. And the bullpen, strong. And the bats showing up. Power. You think about that. As I was talking to you guys about the Nationals in the offseason, we were talking about that the Nationals needed some power. The power showed up. And it's interesting that 2 chips that the Nats could potentially move at the deadline in Luis García Jr. and Nathaniel Lowe. Well, they definitely said, hey, look at me. And if you want to talk about a feel-good story in this as well, as I'm really kind of pulling for Keibert Ruiz, snapped out of his funk with a 3-for-3 night. And it's a bit interesting that this isn't the Keibert Ruiz, I think, save last night, for example. I don't think that, this is the Keibert Ruiz that the Nationals, signed up for, big picture, when they signed him to that bigger deal. But I haven't lost hope in Keibert Ruiz. I've heard some different blogs around the DC market saying he's not the future behind the plate. And, I guess time will only tell. You got Adams in the mix there as well. But, the one thing I know about the Nats is they have some good options down in the minors, prospects, that kind of thing as well. But as far as Keibert Ruiz, riding vibes, 3-for-3, that game last night, a lot of Nationals players got right, restored confidence, and just kind of cemented players that were already good and kind of cemented them in there as even better. And Dalen Lyle. Now, if you did not watch the game, Jacob Young in the outfield, there was a hit to the outfield, and it was Jacob Young's ball. And he's like, I don't see it. I just don't see it. And funny thing is, Dalen Lyle came from right field behind him, near the track there, and caught the ball. So not only, and I get it that Jacob Young was out of position, but a good thing that Dalen Lyle, who had to kind of book it to catch it, kind of just really saying, hey, take a look at me. I'm a good option in the outfield as well. So, you take a look at the Nationals outfield, and I know I talk about this kind of ad nauseum on this show, but a lot of options. In the third segment, I'll talk about Robert Hassell III, but Dale and Lyle is also in the mix. Of course, Dylan Cruz, who we expect to see, inching his way back. James Wood, that there are a lot of options, and there's going to be some winners and losers, or ultimately, extras, if you will. But Dale and Lyle, defensively, looked really good. So look, the Nats have been struggling. I talk about that. They're just 3-15 in June. Ooh, talk about moral victories and kind of clinging on to victories where you can. But I think what rings true in this victory is the opponent. The Dodgers are no slouch. It is kind of an all-star team on the roster, and they did it in LA in front of their fans where the lights burn extra bright and extra hot. Just ask Jacob Young, and they found a way to pick up a big win. But when they win, it's usually because James Wood shows up and shows out. Kind of a quiet guy, but I think that you're starting to see the swagger in James Wood a little bit more. That's good. He should feel good about where he's at, but it's interesting that, when he got his first call up and the media was surrounding him for the first time, he's like, guys, what's going on? And they told him, like, yeah, you're a top name coming up in the pipeline here for the Nationals. Get used to it. And I think James Wood has got used to it. And, it's interesting to see what kind of player he's turning into and what can we expect from him going forward. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about potential all-star candidates in James Wood and CJ Abrams straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of the Talk Nats podcast, part of TalkNats.com. Check them out on Twitter X at TalkNats, also TalkNats.com. And do me a favor, subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify. Give it a 5-star rating, leave some positive comments. Tell your Nationals friends about the Talk Nats podcast, your home for Nationals news. So let's dive into segment number 2, and I like talking about James Wood and CJ Abrams. As when I talk about the Nationals, oftentimes there's not a lot of good things to talk about. And on the show, I've talked about the pitching in the last episode. What Rizzo should do, and Davey Martinez kind of making blunders out there. That I kind of relish the opportunity to talk about what is going well on this team, or the things that are firing. And 2 of those is James Wood for one and CJ Abrams the other. And James Wood for the most part has been the steady, the constant of like a peek into the future of the Nationals. And of course, I know, and I hear this from Nationals fans all of the time, is that we hope it doesn't go down the road of Juan Soto or Bryce Harper or something like that he gets so good that the Nationals can't keep him, because when the Brinks truck comes knocking saying, I got a big money delivery for you, is James Wood going to be able to resist that urge to go to greener pastures? And when I say greener pastures, I'm talking about a winning team year in and year out. And I guess you could put CJ Abrams in that mix as well. Just to talk about this briefly here, that Juan Soto does seem to have a bit of, contract remorse by signing that big deal playing for the Mets, and hasn't been, the year that he had hoped for. And I don't think he has been the game changer that I think the Mets had hoped for. I know the Mets are still playing very well, but I think that, when they acquired, traded for and acquired Juan Soto, I think they thought they were getting more, and hasn't really been that. So, you take a look at Wood, who's getting better and better, and I know that he's under team control here for some time. But in that time, how much better is he going to be? Is he going to be that Major League Baseball marquee name that, a lot of GMs, that have a lot of money to spend? I'm talking Mets here, Padres, Yankees, the ones I'm talking about. That is he going to be able to resist that urge? And I think it's, part of it is the lay of the land. What state are the Nationals going to be in when he is due for a new contract? Say, he's going to be a free agent, down the road. That I think the Nationals better construct a team, sooner than later, and, kind of resign to the fact that we thought we were out of the rebuild, but not so fast. that we don't have all the siding on this thing yet. That I can still see some board here. We need to put up some tar paper. We need to put up some siding. We need to put up vapor barrier, that kind of thing. That there is some layers left for this team before it is ready and habitable, right? Habitable. So you take a look at it. That I think that when the Nationals are ready to sign him to a new deal, I think that money is going to be a motivator for James Wood, of course, but also the team around him, because you got to know that there was at least, I'm not going to say a full court press, but there was at least an effort to bring Juan Soto back here. And for one, he looked at the Mets like, wow, they're going to pay me a lot of money, and let me kind of check in on my old team. I don't think that they're going to be, ready to contend in the near future. So James Wood, CJ Abrams, let's build a winning team, because they are the faces, the marquee names in the light outside Nats Park. If they're not, they should be. James Wood, CJ Abrams. So let's first up, you already know James Wood. He's putting together another monster season. He's got 21 home runs, 57 ribbies, 279 average, 374 OBP, and an OPS well north of 900. And he's played in every game. A steady Eddie, a guy that doesn't get injured too often. Those are all things to like. And he's also sixth in the entire National League. Let's go ahead and underline that, or go over it with a highlighter. He's sixth in the entire National League in OPS among qualified hitters. That ain't just good for a rookie good. That is legit all-star level production. So I like it, and those hard moves that the Nationals had to make years ago. I'm talking, Max Scherzer, Trey Turner. I'm talking Juan Soto. That the return that the Nationals got has been huge. And in that mix, of course, CJ Abrams, quietly, he's been even more complete at the plate this year. He's slashing 277, 351, 474. He's already got 10 homers, 15 doubles, 15 steals, and is near the top in just about every offensive stat for NL shortstops. Now, and I'm kind of veering over the place. I know I should keep it more to the task, but we're talking CJ Abrams here. There's rumblings out there that Luis García Jr. might be on the move. How would it be fitting to put CJ Abrams at second and, Brady House or something of that nature at short? All things to consider. Now, at this time, latest Nationals PR post, he was first in slugging and OPS for NL shortstops, third in OBP, batting average, steals, the whole deal, and he's been red hot lately. 360, 500, 520 over the past week. Slash line there. And, the thing about CJ Abrams is he is prone to going into slumps as well. And, and again, that's all part and parcel of being a young player in the league. But as of right now, living in the right here, right now, I'm going to go ahead and say CJ Abrams is one of the best shortstops in the league. Now, I get it. The Nats aren't winning a ton of games right now, but that's not the all-star criteria. It's individual performances, and both Wood and Abrams are carrying this offense. CJ Abrams made the all-star team last year. James Wood should, I think we can all agree, should make it this year. And honestly, why not both? For a team that is so desperately clinging for positivity, wouldn't that be a good thing for two players that I'm going to go ahead and say are deserving? So let's hope that they can keep it going. Again, a big win over a big opponent yesterday. Let's hope they can pick up another win and kind of just bring some prominence around this team to kind of get people to notice, because if you're looking at the wins and losses, it's not too exciting. There's not a lot to get excited about. But if you want to kind of zoom up, 30,000 foot view, there is some seedlings that are taking place. I had the tree analogy, and it's CJ Abrams, it's James Wood. It's those kind of players that are going to be the ostensibly the future faces of a truly great team. I think we just need to be patient. All right, so coming up here after the break, we check in on Robert Hassell III. Now, listen, I was very excited when he got the call up, but what we saw from him wasn't consistent. There were glimpses, flashes of greatness, but not sustainability. What's the latest with Hassell III? I'll discuss straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of the Talk Nats podcast, part of the Believe Podcast Network, also part of TalkNats.com, also on Twitter X, Talk Nats. And make sure, subscribe, follow on your podcatcher of choice. Of course, the big ones out there are Apple, Spotify. Give it a 5-star rating, leave some positive comments, and share the word about the Talk Nats podcast, your go-to source for Nationals news. So let's dive into segment 3 and talking about another prospect that I am still excited about. Robert Hassell III, really kind of popped off the page when he first got his call up. But, a lot like of other players, it wasn't sustainable. And, the team, necessarily wasn't playing well around him. And there were varying factors at play here. So let's do that. Let's drill down on Robert Hassell III and talk about what he's been up to since his big shot on the big team. So let's close it out by heading to the Triple-A and talk about Robert Hassell III. Yeah, you remember him. If you don't get familiar, the number 11 prospect in the system, part of that Juan Soto haul. And, let's be honest, his first taste of the majors this year was rough. He hit 218 in 21 games, looked overmatched. But in a league of what have you done for me lately, since going back to Rochester, he's looked like the guy we thought we were getting. And more recently here on Friday night, he went 4 for 5 with 2 home runs and drove in 4, just owned Lehigh Valley. And, again, it's just one notch down from the bigs. He's still playing pro ball here, and all things considered, played well. And again, I do think he is going to be a part of the future. It's a bit of a logjam, like I've talked about. If you've listened to this show for some time, I think that Jacob Young outperformed what I think a lot of us had thought he was capable of. So it has put the Nationals in an interesting position. And, the other players in the mix, Dale and Lyle, and you have Call in there for depth as well. So it does make it an interesting question about what to do with some of these players in the outfield. But as far as what he has done in AAA, it has been very well. So talk about what he has done. And in the season in the AAA, Hassell is slashing 311, 361, 463 with 6 homers and 29 ribbies in 46 games. Now that's progress. That's adjusting, and that's exactly what you want from a top prospect. And, to kind of, harken back to even James Wood, it wasn't seamless. Dylan Cruz was not seamless. Sometimes these guys don't shoot straight to the moon, and that's okay. I think that, I cover hockey as well. And if you are a Capitals fan, let's talk about Hendricks Lapierre, right? He was going to be the guy at the third line center position, but wasn't sustainable. Guess what? Got his game right down in Hershey. To bring it back to baseball here, I think that's kind of the same thing with Robert Hassell III. Flashed briefly, but then went down to Rochester and seems to be finding his game. The question is that when opportunity comes knocking, and, say the Nationals, face injury or flounder, then we could very well see Robert Hassell back up here again. I mean, you saw what it meant when Dylan Cruz, Jake Young, these kind of guys got injured. So it presents opportunities. Listen, I still have high hopes on Robert Hassell III, and what we have seen from him is encouraging. But do I think he'll be back in the bigs this summer? Yeah, probably September, if not sooner, like I said. But if he stays like this, could be sooner. Look, we got a lot to talk about with the Juan Soto trade, and for good reason. Wood, Abrams, Gore, that return has reshaped the franchise. And I think that's, kind of a callback to what I was talking about in segment 2 there, that it was tough. Moving on from Soto was difficult. He was the guy. He was the face of the franchise when Harper left town. Let's be honest, that there was a lot of hype train when Harper was here as well, and then it was Juan Soto. But just take a look at Wood, Abrams, and Gore. That was big when we talk about that. And, Hassell in the return that the Nats got here in those moves since the rebuild, that there is a lot of hope, and the return is sometimes worth it. You might not see it at the time, And sometimes if you have kids at home, you tell them like that, they'll ask, when are we going to do it? Someday. When are we going to do that? Someday. And then when that day finally comes, it's like, wow, it's nice. The analogy there is taking your kids to Disneyland. You tell them about how great it is. And when you go there, you're like, see, that was pretty nice. I think that Nationals fans are waiting to go to Disneyland here at some point, that we've been, told about Mickey, and in this case, about the future Nationals are going to be really good. And we're like, really, tell us more stories about that, because at this point, there's still stories that at some point, the Nationals are going to take their fans to Disneyland. And Disneyland, in this analogy here, is a winning product. Can you see it in the future? Can you close your eyes and think about the Nationals in the future, top of the East, and, contending for playoff spots, and maybe even making a push, for greater things, the World Series? At this point, it's just stories, bedtime stories told to us by Mike Rizzo, Davey Martinez, and the Learners. But I don't want these stories to end in a nightmare. I want this to be a story that ends well, where the Nationals are playing well, and we can talk about winning baseball, not in a distant futuristic story, but in reality. We've been told it, and kind of like The Boy That Cries Wolf or The Sky Is Falling, that I want to believe it. And I think to a certain extent, Nationals fans, it is the sky's falling. Look out, the sky's falling. The sky is falling, those kind of things. And sooner or later, people aren't going to believe it. That if this Nationals team doesn't make well on their promise of getting better, then at some point people aren't going to believe it. And that's that. Then you're in a tough waters there. Take a look at the Pirates, for example. Long suffering. The Nationals, the Learners, they've got the money. Why not make the commitment in the team to bring back the good vibes playing at home at Nationals Park? That's what I want more than anything. It's fun to talk about, the future, but at some point I'm sick of talking about futuristic things. I want to talk about winning baseball back in the district. I am not afraid of dreaming. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of the Talk Nats podcast, part of the Believe Podcast Network, talknats.com, Twitter X @TalkNats. And again, one more time, follow, subscribe, 5-star rating, positive comments, and tell your friends about the Talk Nats podcast. I'll talk to you again next time.